If the only thing you take away from this video is that you should definitely download the demo for Crow Country, that would absolutely be enough. But nonetheless, I'm going to attempt for the next 5 to 8 minutes or so to justify that position by going over a number of design choices within Crow Country that immediately endeared it to me. So much so that it caused me to drop every other game that I was playing to absorb the demo and then to buy it on launch day and really just dive in headlong. So let's go ahead and jump right in. The setup is that you play as Mara Forrest, who is on a mission to unravel a mystery at a dilapidated amusement park. Now, I won't say much more than that because it would really be criminal to rob you of anything else if you're planning to at least check out the demo for Crow Country, but suffice it to say that if you're kicking your game off in a spooky amusement park, it's a pretty safe bet that you're going to be in for a good time as a horror fan. Although for horror to be effective, that means your presentation has to be top-notch. Now, I don't necessarily mean on a technical level, although that certainly doesn't hurt, but definitely on an artistic level, considering things like how the action is framed, pacing, and the art style, and I gotta say, Crow Country is nailing all of that for me so far. And let's start with the visuals because there's no getting around it, these are definitely something wholly unique in the space and just immediately attention-grabbing. It's clear it's a low-poly aesthetic, and while I've not made it a secret how much I love 5th gen inspired visuals, Crow Country really does take it up a notch. Rather than just lean on low-poly character models or gritty textures to carry it, the whole design here has a distinctive playfulness despite being a horror game. And I can't be the only one who thinks these character models look like they were just plucked straight out of the original Final Fantasy VII with their bizarrely rounded design, because I'm definitely picking up toaster hand vibes here. And complementing all of the artistry is a really unique way to view a horror game where it's not quite top-down, but a sort of top-down orbital view of your character where you can fully rotate the camera around Mara. At first it seems isometric, but it isn't, because you can absolutely rotate the camera around Mara as much as you want. And you should do that because it always feels like something's hidden just out of view. So it pays to search high and low over every inch of its environment to look for items, tips, and notes, which are just littered all over the place for you to paw through, and, well, we'll come back to that in a little bit, but for now, just know that everything from your view of the action to the minimalist environmental audio works together to form a very accurate homage to 5th gen horror that manages to feel both familiar and completely unique. But you know, it doesn't matter how much a game pulls at your nostalgia heartstrings if it can't deliver a fun or at least satisfying gameplay experience. And just like its presentation, Crow Country is just as adept at bridging the mechanics gap between controls that are faithfully retro and the modernization of those controls in a way that newcomers will definitely appreciate. At any time, you can use tank controls to get Mara around using the D-pad, and it even has a quick turnaround for good measure. But assuming you aren't a purist for that sort of thing and just want to run around without regard to the camera and control it more conventionally, you can do that too. And what I love is that you don't have to dig in the menu somewhere to modify this, they're both just ready to go at all times. Putting aside the practical advantage of just immediately navigating the game how it makes sense to you, if you enjoy both perspectives like I do, then you can instantly switch up your experience just by moving your thumb to the left or right. Aiming definitely took me a little bit of time to get used to since this is such a bizarre perspective for a game like this, but ultimately I got the hang of it, and if we're being honest, as a survival horror game you should probably work on conserving ammo and just avoiding threats as much as possible anyways, right? Or rather, that's what I would say if this game didn't effectively give you infinite ammo, or at least initially so far as I can tell. At any point you can have Mara return to her car and get more pistol ammo from the trunk. Of course you have to work to get back there safely to retrieve it sometimes, but still, it's wild to see a horror game that at least throws you a bone like this to keep things from getting too hopeless, and that's something else I really love about the game is that it is absolutely kind to the player. Not just because you can catch a break on ammo, or at least in the early game you can catch a break on ammo, but even before you start the game, you can completely ignore combat if you'd prefer and just choose baby mode that will let you just enjoy the game like an interactive story. Or if you don't want to go full-on baby mode, then you can also enable the ability to have extra lives spawn if you're looking for some middle ground that still puts up a challenge, but without hamstringing the entirety of Crow Country's threats. And I think that's a pretty smart design decision. Also, it goes without saying that a comforting but not entirely safe-feeling save room is a staple of these types of titles, and Crow Country more than passes the vibe check when it comes to this. No, its music doesn't rival the best Resident Evil entries or anything like that, but there's a ton to do in the save rooms, from reviewing all of the memos and tips you've discovered, to saving your game, and just taking in the ambiance of a cozy respite as you plan out your next move. And believe me, you will definitely appreciate that as you get deeper into the game because it is deceptively difficult. Especially if you decide to go the traditional survival horror route when setting your difficulty. I completely underestimated Crow Country, to put it mildly, and while those opening hours seemed fairly tame by traditional survival horror standards, it ramps up considerably with a range of new threats as the map starts opening up further. I wouldn't say it ever got to a point of frustration or anything like that, but you will definitely feel the squeeze as you start to run low on bullets, healing items, and direction as you get deeper into what Crow Country has to offer. Speaking of, that's another area where Crow Country really shines is in its approach to storytelling. A big part of the pacing in a horror game stems from how it doles out information to you, and the speed at which its greatest revelations are unveiled. Here you'll find not just scraps of newspaper articles or memos to push the story forward, but also tons of environmental clues that hint at unraveling the mystery. Just about every new room or corridor I uncovered seemed to hint at something more sinister, and it does a great job at piecemealing out the narrative's twists and turns. Every time I felt like I was getting a grasp on the story, it'd throw me a curveball that set up even more questions that needed answering. So each new area wasn't just exciting because of whatever threat might be lurking beyond the next door, but I also knew that every time I found the new area that I'd be in for some new piece of the mystery that I hadn't considered yet. All of this is to say that Crow Country feels very streamlined and not at all bloated with spooky nonsense just for the sake of it. Everything feels deliberate, from the puzzles in each room to the arrivals of new characters to deepen the mystery. And while we're talking about the joys of horror discovery, I feel like it has an innovative approach to refreshing some of the staples that we've seen in games like this as well. Now, I've already mentioned the infinite ammo, but there are other brilliant design decisions that really make Crow Country stand out among its contemporaries. For example, beyond the sort of infinite ammo that I already mentioned that you can retrieve from Mara's vehicle, the game gives you plenty of other opportunities to restock thanks to a ton of vending machines and trash cans that litter the park grounds where you can search for resources. And I have no idea how the hidden math they're employing here works, but at a certain point I started guessing with reasonable accuracy when I was likely to find something necessary like a health kit, or whether I would just run across useless trash. It's a clever, dynamic system that throws you a bone if your resources and health are low, but if you're overstocked and in good physical condition, you're unlikely to find anything helpful. I thought that was a really neat way to sort of temper the difficulty of a game like this without making it feel like you're being given too much to make the journey too easy. Beyond blunting the edge of combat difficulties, it also keeps the puzzle difficulty entertaining without getting frustrating. There are a ton of little aha moments that just click as you continue to comb through the park's main sections, but if you get stuck, there's also a helpful fortune teller you find early on who will give you contextual hints if you're jammed up on a certain puzzle. Now, personally, I tried to use this pretty sparingly because basically I'm afraid that there's going to be some in-game consequence for using it, but still, just like the dynamic vending machines and trash cans, it's a really nice inclusion for people who might be new to the genre or just struggling with where to go next. And the thing that really ties all these quality of life enhancements together is that they're entirely optional, so you can organically customize your playstyle. Would you rather go more hardcore? Great, then just ignore vending machines entirely. Been stuck trying to figure out where to go next and just kind of running in circles for the past hour? Great, just hit up the fortune teller to give yourself a break. Oh, and also on the subject of breaks, if you ever interact with a puzzle or read something in the environment, then all of the enemies will be frozen temporarily while you take in that information. That's always a welcome inclusion for me because I cannot stand games that don't let you pause, no matter how much they want to ratchet up the tension. All in all, I have to say I'm not just pleased with Crow Country, but legitimately impressed with it. Survival horror is one of my favorite genres, and I've been coming through various spins on the formula for decades at this point. But Crow Country really is in a class of its own, and I just can't wait to see how the rest of this story plays out. But hey, that's it for this one. The main gist of it is that I'm having a blast with Crow Country, but what about you? Have you played Crow Country yet, or are you at least considering checking out the demo at this point, I hope? If so, let me know in the comments below. Next week should be the games that I picked up in May. In a couple of days, we should have a look at some of the games that are coming out in June, and then beyond that, I still have to work on the decky loader video because that's actually been a little bit more taxing than I thought it would be. So yeah, anyways, as always, thank you so much for your time and hanging out here on the channel. I really, really appreciate it. Have an amazing day, and I'll see you on the next one.